And good evening, everybody. Once again, welcome back to Hoops HD, and welcome to the beginning of our preseason podcast, where we're going to begin actually talking teams, predictions, and everything else about the upcoming season. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, and let me start first by introducing our cast of characters here. On the right side of my screen, I think the left of everyone else's, first we have John Teitel. John, how are you doing tonight?
Well, it's been a long day, but I'm very glad to be here.
John, if you've been following the website, has been posting some great interviews. There's a great interview with Chris Holtman. We'll be talking Big East in our next podcast, not this one. But he did a great interview with Chris Holtman today. Next up is our other John, John S. We've got John T and John S. John, how are you doing there? You got a new look going on in the.
Yep, I'm fresh out of the chop shop. And speaking of John's other interviews, I would also recommend Al Skinner for our friends from Boston College if they're looking to go back to better times.
Yeah, we are going to talk a little Boston College at some point here.
Do we have to?
Podcast. Yeah, we have to. Next up, the podcast that we are doing here is the ACC. That's where we're starting things off. And our ACC expert, Joby Fortson. Joby, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well. I think the conference is going to really show well, especially out of Louisville.
Before we actually get into our team-by-team breakdown, we are going to start with some of the other breaking stories in the ACC, the most interesting of which has come from Louisville. And the last of our cast of characters is our expert in strippers himself, David Griggs. David, how are you?
Well, I've been better. I mean, everybody's heard the news about Playboy, and I just think taking the nudity out is going to damage the enhancement of the articles. I'm so disappointed.
Okay, now we have sound effects going on here.
Wow. Louisville has had a spectacular offseason. I mean, it's an offseason unlike any other that they've had in quite some time. Wow.
And that's where we want to start. We've actually got three programs that are facing NCAA inquiries or even sanctions this year in the ACC. But the biggest news recently has been what's going on in Louisville, where the book came out and a recent ESPN Outside the Lines story where at least 5 players have come out and said that hey, they were recruited by Louisville, and Andre McGee, who was a grad assistant at the time, was an assistant coach this year for UMKC, although he's just in the past week stepped down from his job there. Brought them into parties where he paid to have strippers doing everything that strippers could possibly do at these parties, basically. Where do we want to start? Joby, you want to start us in here on what this looks like for Louisville and how this may affect them this season?
Well, I mean, the interesting start was, Patino not even showing up to ACC Media Day. I mean, it's going to be tough for them to say, oh, it's not a distraction. And they're already creating their own distraction off it.
He still has 12 more hours in case he changes his mind.
This Louisville was already going to have to take a step back. They were already not going to be in that elite 3 to 4. They were going to be in that next grouping. But now I think I think it would be wise of them, though I don't know if they'll follow this. It might be wise of them to follow the Syracuse route from last year, to be very honest.
So the Syracuse route.
For those of you that don't remember, the Syracuse route is start the season, see how you're doing, and when it's apparent you're not making the tournament, give yourself a tournament ban.
And then go out and beat Notre Dame and
right, and then go do that.
Oh, we'll deal with Syracuse soon enough.
Yeah. Well, okay, go ahead, Joby. But
no, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, this is okay. What Louisville is looking at, and in case you've been living under a rock lately, they again, like Chad described, they not only were they bringing strippers to the dorm, but a member of the staff was orchestrating it, and that really jacks this up on steroids. Without that, you're looking at excessive entertainment for recruits, which is a violation, but it's a violation of along the lines of maybe you lose some recruiting visits and contacts. Not that big of a deal. When a coach is involved, it jacks it up. I don't see how they're going to get away without level 1 sanctions, which you're looking at postseason ban, most likely. What you're looking at is probably excessive entertainment, failure to monitor, and then the catch-all that everyone loves is lack of institutional control. I just don't see. In my opinion, I agree with what Joby, or we lost Chad. I agree with what Joby said. I think the schools that are facing level 1 sanctions get back to normal a lot quicker when they go ahead and blow themselves up on the front end. That's what Ohio State did in basketball. That's what Ohio State did in football. And when this happens to Ohio State again, that's what they'll do again. Louisville, I think they might want to consider just going ahead and doing that. I realize you hate it for the current players that are there, especially when this came out after school started. It doesn't give them a chance to transfer and get a waiver and probably not even have to sit out a year. But for the longevity of the program, I think it would be a good move to just go ahead and institute and self-impose a ban. Done. While Chad is still away.
Well, they're going to have to rely a lot on Damian Lee this year, in my opinion. The transfer from Drexel, it's not clear that they have. I mean, losing all that they lost to the NBA and et cetera, Rozier and Jones in the backcourt, that they were going to be coming slow out of the blocks, and I think they will definitely do that again, or do that still. This is the the cynic is pick this year, because next year they have a strong recruiting class that's going to be around another year. 2016-17 probably is going to be back to normal in a lot of ways at Louisville. So take your medicine now.
Yeah.
And that's assuming they're not hit with any scholarship restrictions, depending on how quickly the NCAA decides to levy a notice of allegations and then do a hearing. It's probably not going to happen during the season, but we'll have to see what happens this summer.
Oh, damn it, Chad.
They're still going to get Mitchell, Ding, and Spalding, though. Those guys. And they'll stay. I think that's what this does. Is I don't think they're running off the NBA.
Right.
They weren't probably good enough to do that anyway, but they're definitely good players.
All right. I had a little technical difficulties here on my end, much like Fox is having right now, trying to broadcast the World Series. But I am back. Maybe you guys feel me. Where are we now?
Just discussing the allegations and what Louisville, how good they're going to be this year, and whether or not they should be proactive on the front end and self-impose a ban.
Yeah.
And can you really get them for failure to monitor, though? I mean, a coach was orchestrating the whole thing. The whole thing was monitored.
Well, isn't that what they hit Larry Brown with, failure to monitor?
Yes.
Well, David, have you? I
think
don't know if you've addressed this already, but is getting a stripper even an NCAA violation? Should it be?
Not that I can tell.
But still, it's awfully rare when your assistant coach is allegedly involved with coordinating
He
some
was
of
monitoring.
the strippers.
Who's monitoring? Right. Let me. Well, I guess the other question we have here is, I mean, Rick Pitino says he's not going to step down over this, but is there a chance that this could, in the long run, end up being the end of his career? Do you think there's a chance that this could bring him down? Anyone?
Chance, sure. I don't think it will, but yeah, there's a chance. There's a chance, and I'm not saying it was touch and go. Think about it, it was touch and go for Boeheim, even, I think, during our Syracuse reference.
And I think that Syracuse reference there is a good segue, because Syracuse is the second team dealing with NCAA sanctions this year. Jim Boeheim has been suspended for the first 9 ACC games, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
We turn over to John T. here. John, any thoughts on how Boeheim being out is going to affect the Syracuse team this year?
Sure. I don't think for 9 games it's going to be the end of the world. I think that Hopkins, the assistant coach, who's the coach in waiting, can handle it. They have a pretty good track record. I believe they've now had winning seasons for 46 straight years, which I believe is the longest active streak in D1. I know a lot of that has to do with having a Hall of Fame coach, but a lot of that has to also do with having a system in place where you never rebuild, you always reload. They have senior leadership in Cooney and Gabinajay. They have assistants like Autry and Jerry McNamara. They have enough pieces to the puzzle. I think that they can survive. I don't think they're going to really be a contender at the top of the ACC, but I think they'll be just fine for 9 games without Jimmy B.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I'll throw a hypothetical out for you. If Mike Hopkins does very good in his 9 games, you think there's a possibility that Boeheim moves up his resignation and lets Hopkins take the reins full time? And someone is already shaking his head.
No. And I would. I think personally, I think Boeheim is not going to give up until he's pretty much thrown out the door. I think that's just the way that he is. I think that's his attitude as a coach, and I don't think he's going to ever step down early unless he has to. And John T, I think I see you nodding along with me there. We have one other program also with a pending investigation in North Carolina that seems to have been pending for about the last 15 years. I don't know what's going on here. David, why don't you? I know you've got a little bit of an update here as to why this is taking so long. What's going on in Carolina?
Yes. Well, it's some days just aren't your day. They were hit with 5 serious violations, 5 level 1s. Now, okay, I need to clarify that most of this had nothing to do with men's basketball, but enough of it did to where they could end up having a problem. So they got the notice of allegations, and they had 90 days to respond. While preparing their response, and again, some days just are not your day, they uncovered even more allegations. I believe it dealt with men's soccer, and it was 2 sports, and I think one of them was men's soccer. I don't want to miss
women's basketball.
Women's basketball. Okay, yes.
Women's basketball coaching change will occur.
Right. And it was more of the. I think men's soccer was more. It wasn't. It was something different with men's soccer, but it was still a serious violation. And with women's basketball, it was more of the same. So they had to resubmit that to the NCAA, which essentially, without getting into all the technicalities, restarted the process. So the allegations have been amended. The NCAA is working on that. It will probably be well after the basketball season is over before they're resubmitted to North Carolina, in which they'll have another 90 days to respond. And who knows, maybe they'll uncover even more violations. But it is not going to be pretty at all. North Carolina basketball, I can't imagine that it is dead. It might be going away for a little bit, but given the history of that program, it's one of the richest programs in the country. It will recover. I'm not sure some of their other programs will. Football's going to get obliterated. And I just don't like how North Carolina handled this. Getting back to what we were saying earlier with Louisville, they knew about this over the summer. They had a chance to go ahead and blow themselves up, give the players a chance to transfer, go to other places so they don't lose their season. They could have gotten waivers and not had to sit out and started working on getting back to normal. I think that North Carolina is going to be there's this narrative in the press, well, the NCAA is not doing anything about North Carolina. I think they're going to do a lot. I think North Carolina is going to get absolutely clobbered. It won't be this year, but I think after this athletic year, it is not going to be pretty.
Well, Joby, let me throw this over to you. Is a different situation here with Carolina versus Louisville, or even the Syracuse situation from last year, where you've got a Carolina team here that is a legitimate, not only ACC champion, but national championship caliber.
They're preseason number 1. I mean, They are this year's. I don't know. They're not going to be as good as last year's Kentucky team, but they are. If you're going to pick a team that is last year's Kentucky team, it's North Carolina. I mean, they're returning just power. I mean, when is Paige going to graduate? I mean, that guy.
So how can you seriously even consider blowing it up if you have a chance to get this season before it's done?
Well, okay, but North Carolina is an elite program. They're going to. I mean, Ohio State's number 1 now in football. I just don't think that it's anything unusual for them to be in the top 5 and to be a Final Four candidate now. If you're going to wait for a year where you're not, you might be waiting a while. It's the first time they've ever been number 1.
Well, yeah, but they did have what's known as the Matt Doherty era. So
There was that. Now, okay, now I don't think the NCAA is going to be that cruel. They're not going to reinstate Matt Doherty. That would just be.
The Eighth Amendment protects them, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, they could also send Matt Doherty back to SMU when Larry Brown finally leaves. That would
Don't
also be
hire
a
Matt
sufficient
Doherty.
reason.
He wrecks your program, and then 5 years later, you get absolutely clobbered by the NCAA. It's just, I
Well,
don't.
I believe last I heard Doherty was coaching a lower division school down in the D.C. area, if I'm right.
Really.
Anyhow, let's kind of segue from that, from the Carolina discussion of the potential sanctions that are coming to what we just mentioned here, that Carolina being the number one team in the nation heading into the season. And let me throw this out there, actually getting to the teams themselves. Is there anybody in the ACC that you think could win the ACC other than Carolina, or are they just that good?
Homer alert. Homer alert.
Homer alert. Well, I'm not a homer, and I agree with his homer. I think that there are easily there's only 10 teams in the top 10. I've counted them. There's only 10, and I think easily three of the best teams are in the ACC, and one is Virginia and one is Duke, in addition to North Carolina. It is so top heavy. You have essentially got three teams that are 2 seeds or better, right in the same conference.
Well, let's talk a little bit Virginia then. And I know, Joby, you're the homer, so let's get a little different perspective.
Oh yeah, let's get the homer's perspective. Who do you like, Joby?
Because Joby, we know you like them, but let me bring in John Teitel here. John, how good is this Virginia team this year? How good do you think they're going to be?
Very good. I wish that Justin Anderson would still be around and that Austin Nichols was eligible after transferring from Memphis. If so, I think they could be literally the number one team in the nation. Tony Bennett is a great coach. He was Conference Coach of the Year last year and the year before. They are senior heavy. Mike Doby, Malcolm Brogdon, Anthony Gill. I don't know how the point guard situation is going to be. I don't know how the offense is going to be. Obviously, they know defense better than almost anyone. The schedule looks manageable. A tough game against Villanova. I think Ohio State's down. Cal's up. So we'll see how they do in non-conference play. They're definitely going to make the tourney, and they're definitely going to be like a top 5 seed, I'd say. I just think there might be a player or two away from being at the number 1 seed level.
So you're not as confident in London Parantes at the point guard position, or?
I mean, he was decent last year, and hopefully he showed some growth. I don't know if I kind of see him more as a game manager rather than a win the game by yourself, a la a Marcus Page or a Melo Trimble or someone.
Well, when it comes to Virginia, one of the things that's going to be discussed a lot, I think, especially in the early season games, is the shot clock rules. The fact that we're now at a 30-second instead of a 35-second. I think that's going to help Virginia because they play such a stifling defense, and now they'll have to do it for 30 seconds instead of 35.
I agree. Virginia would certainly wait around and take a shot when it was appropriate, so to speak, but it wasn't. I feel like the Bo Ryan, you must pass it 4 times, Gene Hackman, Hoosier style. They will run, the offense will not change dramatically. It's not one of those purposeful situations. The defense, you said it. How many times the teams could not take a shot before 5 seconds were on the shot clock? It's going to be remarkable to see that. The key player to watch is Muriel Shayok. He's a sophomore. Very good defender. Can he take somewhat of the Justin Anderson role? Because it's what John hinted at with Parentes. Parentes is a great point guard in the turnover-assist ratio. But the question that you're going to have with Virginia is, does he have to actually – he can make three-point shots, but you don't want him like Marcus Page at North Carolina. He's not that player. But Shayok and some of the other players, Evan Nolte, et cetera, can maybe take some relief out from long range. And we'll see. If they can't, then I think you're looking at a top 4 seed. But if they can, you're looking at the preseason Ken Pom top 4 right now.
Right. So we got Carolina. With their great front court and Marcus Page, we've got Virginia. And we haven't even mentioned yet, by the way, we also have the defending national champions here in the conference at Duke. And I think that just shows how incredibly strong the ACC is going to be this year. And David, I know you actually are normally not a Duke supporter, but you really liked this team last year, and you were right about them. Now we're in this situation where Coach K has, I think, fully bought into the John Calipari school of one and dones. It is, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, in this case, I think you did, and he's playing it as well, if not better than Calipari, I would argue. What a team he's going to have this year. Chase Jeter, Derek Thorne, Brandon Ingram, and then, you got guys like Grayson Allen, who could be a star this year and was basically a role player until the tournament last year.
I mean, this is a really solid. We had talked about it some over the summer, but I realized they lost a lot, but they have just reloaded, and I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that I'm expecting them to win it all again, but they're going to be right there, and they're going. On top of that, even if they slip a little bit early on with some of their youth, they're going to be battle tested going into the tournament. Duke was just roaring down the stretch last year, and they had won at Wisconsin. They beat Wisconsin twice, and neither game was at Cameron. That's pretty. I mean, they were just remarkable last year.
Let me throw it over here to John S. John, is there anybody else besides these three teams that has a shot to challenge for the top spot in the ACC? Or
John, if you say Boston College,
yes.
No, Leo Macchio's not here, so I'm not going to mention Boston. But I think Miami is probably going to be the team outside of the big three that would be poised to make a big run this year. They just got to learn to be able to beat some of their so-called bye games. Hopefully they won't have any results like Eastern Kentucky last year. Yep. But we did see last year how good they could be when they were the only team to win at Cameron Indoor.
Well, I saw our other John shaking his head at you. John, you think he's wrong about this Miami team?
I like Miami, but you need to go a little same state, different city. I believe the Seminoles are actually going to be the sleeper in the ACC. They have a veteran coach in Leonard Hamilton. They returned their top 6 scorers from last year. They also add McDonald's All-American Dwayne Bacon. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people down in Seminole country.
And yeah, this Florida State team has 3 players this year that are 7 foot tall or higher, and that's going to be that's a team that could maybe even create a matchup problems for a team like North Carolina down low. So I agree with John T. that Florida State may be the more dangerous team than Miami. I'm with you there.
And those 7-footers, not one of them is their best player. It's the X-Man, who might get with all the talent at North Carolina and Duke and Brogdon coming back at Virginia. It might be Xavier Raythan-Mays who gets ACC Player of the Year because he's going to average a lot of points.
I would also point out that Miami's coach has been to the Final Four before, but Florida State, what's the furthest they've gone? Sweet 16 under Hamilton?
Yeah, they went to the Sweet 16. I forget how many years ago it was. But the other thing about Miami is that it is now a basketball school.
58-0.
And there were fewer people at that game than will be at
the ACC.
Good grief.
They will keep most teams, with Larinaga's good, solid defense, they will keep most teams this year below less than what the football team was able to do to Clemson this weekend. Wow. 58 is a nice mark for Miami to shoot for.
A team you haven't, and I know we're getting into all of them, but it just seems like how loaded is this conference, and really is it going to eat itself up to where you have what is otherwise a team that's safely inside the bubble and even in the top 25 because every time you play someone's got to lose. I think Maryland is looking awesome this year.
Yeah. And David has done it again. Welcome to the
I didn't say Boston College.
He did.
There is one other team that had a nice NCAA tournament run. They lost their best, maybe their two best players, but
Two
they
best
have
players.
a lot of depth, and that's Notre Dame. That they're actually they're definitely a tournament team. Yeah, August, really took over on the inside last year, and you still have Vesturia can take a lot of what Connaughton was doing on the outside with the outside shots. Jackson's solid. They've got a pretty darn good team in South Bend. They're going to be punching their ticket come March. I'm pretty confident today.
Oh yeah.
I like this Notre Dame team as a tournament team. Obviously, I don't think they're going to be anywhere close to what they were last year, but I mean, we as a 7 seed, 8 seed, something in that range, maybe even up to a 6 is their cap, though. That type of range is where I'm looking at this Notre Dame team.
I mean, they're around
Even last year.
Yeah. What did they get? They were a 3 last year, weren't they?
They were
They
a
won
3
the
seed.
tournament. Yeah, they won the ACC tournament, which propelled them up to the seed ranking.
And actually made a run to the Elite Eight for the first time since '79.
They earned that was a very deserved 3, if not 2, at the end of the day.
I know we've had a little discussion about Louisville and Syracuse, especially more off the court than on the court, but are these both? Do you think both those teams are also serious tournament contenders?
No. I think they're tournament contenders. I wouldn't say they're. I think they will contend for it. I don't think it's a slam dunk for either of them.
Well, let's talk a little Louisville. I mean, they bring in Damian Lee, who scored a ton of points, albeit at Drexel. They brought in Trey Lewis from Cleveland State. Are those guys good enough to step in here and help and get Louisville there?
Well, against Georgia Tech and Boston College in Maryland, and I don't think that those are. I think Louisville is good by most standards, but not. I mean, when you look at Notre Dame, Florida State, Miami, Duke, I don't think they're anywhere close to that level. They're going to have to be. I mean, they'll be able to win games at home, but I don't know. It's going to be hard for them to put together a profile, especially when you look at. I could see Louisville really struggling to solidify themselves in the tournament.
Well, let me turn over to John T. We discussed Syracuse a little bit. Let's look a little more in depth, especially on the court, as opposed to on the coaching on the bench, but on the court itself. You got Malachi Richardson coming in as a freshman. You got some returning veterans like Kabinji. How about the Syracuse team? I think they would have been near the bubble had they stayed eligible last year. Although they kind of fell apart down the stretch, but they would have been an NIT team at least. Is this a tournament team this year?
A great question. I think they're going to be right on the bubble. I mean, again, a manageable non-conference schedule. Wisconsin will be very tough. I think UConn, Michigan, and St. John's are all winnable, shall we say. They have some veteran leadership. They have some good wing players. I don't know about inside in terms of a power forward center type. So I think that they're going to get beat up by big teams like Carolina and like Duke, at least in terms of a freshman. I know they lost guys like Jaleel Okafor last year and stuff. So I think they're going to get really beat up inside. The zone defense that Syracuse is known for has been proven to be effective over the last 4 decades for the Orange, and hopefully they can use it to collapse on a big man, but I think they're really going to get beat up in the post.
Well, I believe DeJuan Coleman is healthy this year for them. He missed most of last year with injury, so he'll help down low, but that's just one guy anyhow. And I think we mentioned how much size we have in this conference, how many good front courts we have. Joby, let me turn to you on this because you and I were discussing this before we came on the air. Anybody else that you see as a dark horse or a long shot candidate to be in the tournament discussion here in the ACC? And I think I know where you're going with it.
Yeah, well, there's 2 teams we haven't mentioned that we should. One, I'll just quickly, does NC State do their typical, hey, we're going to get in as a 12 seed and upset somebody and go around Cat Barber, Solid, Henderson? But the team that really I think we should look at off the radar is I think Danny Manning's really turning Wake Forest in the right direction right now. Wake is a team to watch out for. I mean, the ACC really is. We're talking. We've already gone through 8, 9, 10 teams already, so it's going to be very tough for Wake to actually get to that point, given the strength of the conference in 2015-16. But, wow, this is a team that they came within an eyelash of beating Duke, an eyelash of beating Virginia on the road. I mean, and they're gonna put some of those close calls into the win column. They could be. I'll be shocked if they're not in the NIT, and they could be that team that surprises out of the ACC and is that sexy sleeper pick.
Well, and let me throw it out there that, I mean, we're talking about, this is the 9th or 10th team we're talking about in the ACC, but if you're talking about a conference that has 3 teams as legitimate 1-seed candidates heading into the season, is it 9 teams possible in the ACC? I mean, the Big East did it at a 16-team league. This is a 15-team league. And maybe the question is this ACC as good as that Big East that put 9 teams in?
I think it's better, honestly. Well, it's hard to say. Like, one of the things, that Big East was interesting because, like, it actually isn't the highest percentage of teams to ever get in from a conference. When the Big 12, for instance, got 7 out of 10, and like the ACC would routinely get 6 out of their 9 in. I think they can get 9 teams, and one of the things that actually helps if you look at whenever something like that happens in a league, when you get 9, 10, 11, the bottom is way, way, way at the bottom. TCU won 1 game in 2 years. The year the Big East did it, the 5 that didn't get into a postseason tournament at all. So it was, your 11th place team is NCAA and your 12th place team is nowhere near the NIT. And with Boston College and Georgia Tech, yes, Clemson, I think they could do it.
Well,
I will say this for TCU, though. At least they did their conference a big favor last year by running the table, even against a bunch of no-name competition, with the exception of Ole Miss.
Yeah, but let me throw it out there to anybody that wants to answer. We've mentioned Wake Forest. Is there anybody else that anyone feels may end up being a bubble team this year that we have not already discussed? Let me start with John T. From the ACC here.
Not that we haven't already discussed. I'll stick with the Seminoles. I think they can really make the tourney this year. I personally think 9 is pushing it. I mean, it's possible, but I believe the ACC at 6 last year, and I'm just not seeing. I mean, have Miami and Florida State and Wake all make it in addition to the last 6? Possible, but I think it's really pushing it.
John S., I know we spoke a little off the air about Pittsburgh. Do you want to make a case for them or no?
If you look at their schedule, I think they do have a case this year. They get Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech home and home. They also get Syracuse and Louisville, where conceivably they might sweep one of those 2 teams. And their home split, they get Wake Forest, Boston College, NC State, and if they can beat Duke or Virginia, that could also give them a signature win. And then the road games are at Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Notre Dame, and North Carolina. It wouldn't shock me if they won as many as 11 games in conference this year.
I guess my problem with Pitt is that they're relying on some transfers this year from Coppin State and from Brown, and nothing against Sterling Smith or Rafael Maya, but that's a major step up in competition to go from Ivy League hoops to ACC hoops.
Not when you're playing Boston College.
The one element that Pitt has, and I don't, like I said, I'm a little bit more on the Wake bandwagon than Pitt, but when you have a point guard, it makes everything a little bit easier. And Robinson's pretty. He's really good. He can probably set up others to do well. And he's underrated. So I don't think Pitt will do it. Don't get me wrong, but Pitt definitely. I'll be shocked if they're not very much in the NIT hunt at a minimum.
Well, their season opener is also going to be unlike what they usually schedule. This year they're playing Gonzaga, and I think it's Japan in a neutral court game.
Yeah,
we'll know right away whether or not they're for real.
For that.
Yeah, their home arena was booked for a concert. I think Bon Jovi's there.
Let's just real quickly take a look at a couple other teams here. Joby, we talked a little bit about NC State. I guess last year I thought NC State wouldn't have a prayer at the NCAA tournament. And they proved me wrong. They've now lost the two best players.
Every year.
Can they do it again?
They can't. The conference is a little tougher, and John T. kind of hinted at it. If you're going to remove a team that was there last year, they're a natural one because I like the other five who are in more. But always do it. And Cat Barber is a solid player. Henderson, the transfer, is they're saying is a very solid player. It's the typical NC State way. We'll see if they can do it with their lack of depth, but some really good players in the front line.
We'll have to get our research team on this. Is NC State, hands down, historically, the most successful double-digit seeded team ever?
Yeah.
LSU of the late 80s could also make a case for being a strong double-digit seed.
I realized they were an 8 last year, which is not only were they not a double-digit seed, they wore white in the first game. They were an 8, weren't they? And then but still, they went out, they beat Villanova, and they actually kind of played Louisville fairly tough.
Let me turn back to John T. Virginia Tech with Buzz Williams in now his second year here. Is this team on the way up?
Sure, but I think that's only because there's little alternative. I mean,
there's nowhere else to go, right? But I mean, I don't think that we're seriously considering them as a tournament caliber team or even a bubble team this year. But do you think things are heading the right direction the next few years? What you've seen from him so far?
Yeah, I mean, I liked Seth Allen when he was at that old ACC school of Maryland, and now he brings some stability to the point guard role. He's got a backcourt mate of Justin Bibbs, who has some Hall of Fame bloodlines, with his uncle Michael Haynes being an NFL Hall of Famer. Beyond that, I think the cupboard is a little bit bare. So in this conference, they have a uphill battle, and they're gonna be at the bottom of the hill for a while. But if they can get some big time recruit or something, I don't know if Buzz can get it done in only his second year, but I'm willing to give him some time.
Over in Clemson, Joby, you got Blossom game there who can play, but there's nothing else there, is there?
No, the backcourt's hideous, but they're not as bad as when you reference a TCU from another conference. They're not Boston College, which I think I would love to hear Lee Del Vecchio's take on right now.
It's a shame he's not here.
But you know, Clemson will be. Clemson's going to be near the bottom, and they could surprise with a random win. They could play spoiler for some of these guys right on the bubble if you do have a Wake, a Pitt, and NC State vying for a spot. A loss to Clemson's not going to look pretty, and they have the capability on a given day, especially at home, to do that in that bandbox they play.
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, David, I was just going to ask you about Georgia Tech. They've got Marcus George Hunt, but Brian Gregory still has a job after last season, and I honestly I was a little bit shocked on that.
I was floored to learn that not only does he still have a job, but he was given an extension. Jesus, I mean, imagine had they come in 13th last year. Wow. I mean, would he have gotten 2 years? I just think that there are tire fires, and Georgia Tech is worse than that. What an unbelievable! I just don't understand how you can be in Atlanta and not be good accidentally. They're a mess. So here's the question: Virginia Tech, obviously, Buzz Williams' seat isn't even warm, let alone hot. How hot is Brian Gregory's seat? How hot is Brad Brunell's seat at Clemson? When are they finally going to make a change?
That's a good question, but I'll tell you one team that I don't think is going to make a change, no matter how bad they are this year, is Boston College. I think Jim Christian's going to be given another year or two there to try to do something.
And you hate to see somebody lose their job at, I think it was Kent, and end up at a place like Boston College.
Although he did bring in Eli Carter, who's now on his third school after starting out at my alma mater, Rutgers. So they have one player this year at BC to look at.
Right. Georgia Tech is so bad.
Any other final thoughts from anyone about the ACC this season?
I'll tell you what, there's going to be a couple showcase games on December 22 to follow up on what you just said. Virginia Tech is going to be playing St. Joe's at the Barclays Center, followed by Lee Del Vecchio's favorite game, and that's Boston College versus Fordham.
Yes,
I would.
this is the ACC A10 challenge, folks. If you miss it, you miss nothing.
I can confirm that there are tickets still available.
This follows to me on one
the
of
reason
my
why
favorite
we
stories
highlight
I heard from.
the reason why we highlight those two games for those out there who don't know are the ACC when they took the tournament to the Barclays. They in exchange, so to speak, they put up a couple of games both this year and next year, and the ACC didn't exactly try their hardest on supplying.
I would have asked for my money back.
Well, this reminds me of a story from some of my A10 friends, David. One guy who was in Philadelphia for the A10 tournament several years back left 2 tickets on his windshield for the tournament. When he came back about an hour later, there were 16 tickets on the windshield.
All right, I think that pretty much covers everything with the ACC. What we're going to do now is we're gonna finish up here. Coming up, for those of you that are watching us on the website, coming up tomorrow, you'll see our posting for the Big East. You'll see we're all looking exactly the same as we are because we're actually be recording that tonight. But as far as the ACC preview goes, we definitely think it's going to be a multi-bid league. I think that was a consensus pick. But for
always
David,
looking exactly as I am.
for David Griggs, Joby, John S., John T., and myself, Chad, thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you again real soon.